game balance is a tricky thing to get right, especially in the early game portions. You don't want to make it too easy, as then you run the risk of players losing interest or running into difficulty spikes later on, but you also don't want to make it too hard, as most players don't like being confronted with an insurmountable brick wall less than 10 minutes out of the gate. Pokémon has had numerous difficulty balancing problems across its vast history, such as Gen 6's broken EXP share, Gen 1's overpowered psychic types, and Whitney and her infamous Miltank from Generation 2. However, none of these things are as bad as the case of Pokémon Super Mystery Dungeon. Oh sweet Arceus, what the hell happened here? Difficulty balancing and difficulty spikes are nothing new for the Mystery Dungeon sub-series. Hell, the Explorers games throw you up against the Groundon as a second boss when the last major boss fight was a Drowsy. However, this game starts out hard and stays at the level of difficulty for the most of it. For a start, somebody thought that making you crawl through a dungeon full of dragon types right at the start of the game and pitting you against like a bite as the first boss was a great idea. When you and your partner are stuck as low-level starter Pokemon and naturally have no access to Dragon, Ice, or Fairy-type moves at this point. The difficulty continues later on throughout most of the game, making almost every major story dungeon feel like a slug and something you have to grind for hours in order to have any chance of making it through alive. Not helping matters is the sheer amount of railroading and extremely patronizing story. Previous Mystery Dungeon titles had you go through a couple of dungeons before you could go and challenge the Explorer in various dungeons whilst taking on missions. Sure, you had the moments where you were forced to go through certain dungeons in order to progress the plot, but those things usually happened towards the end or whenever a major event happened. Super Mystery Dungeon instead decides to put you in control of literal children, teaching you the basics of exploration throughout an extremely slow-paced story which heavily limits your freedom of exploration. Sure, you do eventually get the chance to go off and explore, but getting to this point is an exercise in sheer frustration. It constantly dangles these interesting story threads just out of reach, like the fact that Pokemon all over the world are turning to stone, or that legendary Pokemon are disappearing. But the moment it looks like you're finally going to get the chance to undertake a grand adventure, the game basically goes, "No, you're not ready yet," and delays it yet again. Making matters worse is that by the time you finally get to the point where you get the full Mystery Dungeon experience, it feels like the developers realized they'd used up too much time on the school portion, forcing them to rush through the rest of the story in order to squeeze it onto the cartridge. Hand-holding never really turns out well, does it?